Howdy, everybody. I'm Jacob. Catherine and Ben asked me to give a little bit of a different perspective on Old Rugged Cross. I'm super happy to do that because the song is actually very, very interesting. And so I wanted to talk about a couple different things to go a little bit deeper into it. So this is the song Old Rugged Cross as it appears in the hymn book. And anytime I'm teaching a song or making a YouTube video of a new song, I will always consult the hymn book. Doesn't always work out. So there's a couple songs where like the hymn book is totally wrong and you shouldn't pay attention to it. So Amazing Grace in the hymn book, the chords are really weird. And He's Got the Whole World in His Hands is not even close to how people sing it. And I'm working on videos where I go into this as well too. So check out the YouTube channel if you're interested in kind of how songs progress through time and just how music works. But yeah, Old Rugged Cross. So first of all, look at this in the hymn book. This is pretty nasty. It's really kind of hard to see what the chords are and the nature of it. You know, you've got two voices in each hand. This is very much written for choir. You can play this on piano, but it's very much for choir. So what I've gone ahead and done is taken the hymn, kind of put it in this easier to read jazz format. You should have access to this PDF. So this is the chords as they appear in the hymn book in the key of B flat. And you can see this is gross. There's a lot going on here. Here is the hymn as you've been taught in the Piano by Pictures arrangement. And then here it is in the key of C with all of the weird chords from the hymnal. And the reason I've done this is because there's a couple odd things about this song, and they don't really make sense until you consult the chords in the hymn book. But the first thing I want to look at is the overall structure for the song, because sometimes you can think of a song in just one long line, just a stream of notes, and you play the notes in order until the song is over. And that's honestly not a great way to think about music, and it makes it a lot harder to memorize things. So what I like to do is use the layout, the geometry, the meter, the structure, and I like to see it from a sort of bird's eye view. And so what I've done here is I've taken the hymn, and if we look at the hymn book, right, how many lines is this? 1, 2, 3, this is a bunch of lines, and it's like 2 bars per line, 2 bars per line, 1 bar, 1.25 bar per line. So it's not laid out in a very nice way at all. And it's sort of on the performer to make sense of it. What I like to do a lot of times is to put it in a format that works better for me. And so most hymns actually follow this exact structure where there's 4 lines. Each of them are 4 bars apiece, not considering this pickup, but really the song starts here. So we have 4 bars, 4 bars, 4 bars, and 4 bars. And so now that we have it laid out this way, look at this pattern that emerges here. So the first 2 lines are identical chord-wise, very similar note-wise. So we start with this C, and I'm just playing octaves down here, playing a root position chord here. I'm not thinking about this too much. But we go C, and then it goes up to the 4th chord, which is F, and then we go up to the 5th chord, which is G, and G really wants to go back to C. So we have a kind of complete harmonic sequence here. We have our tonic, our 1, our first note of the scale in the key of C major. Then we go up 1, 2, 3, 4 to F. And then we go 5. And then 5 really wants to go back to 1. And we see this a lot in music where you go up. Here's your first chord, the C, and we go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then it's really crunchy and tense, and then resolves back to the 1. And we get this. I mean, this is in everything. That's something to pay attention to. We have 1, then 4, then 5, then 1. And then the next line is the exact same thing. So we have C, then F, then G, then C. And so we call that the A section. That's the first kind of thing that you're doing in the song, the A. And so there's 2 A's, so this would be A, and then we have this B section. This is where the song just changes up a little bit. So instead of hanging out on our one chord, which is our kind of home base for the song, we go all the way up to 5, which is this G, and then you're just like, whoa, okay, we've sort of gone up. We're sort of destabilized. We're flying over the tonic now, and then it resolves, and then we go to the 4, and then we have another little pull down to that one chord. So we play G, then C, then F, then C. This is basically a backwards Lean on Me, actually, because Lean on Me is C, then go to F, then back to C, then go to G. And so this is what? G, C, F, C. So, the more songs you play, the more you can kind of look for fun little goofy patterns like that. If it helps you to think of the B section of Old Rugged Cross as like a backwards Lean on Me, great. And then if it makes it more confusing, don't worry about that. So we have our G, our C, our F, and then it goes back to our C. And then the last line is going to be sort of like our A again. We sort of return to that first theme, so it's more satisfying. And then we go to the F. And then at the end, we have something very common where we go 1, which is our C, then 5, and then 1. And that just sort of makes a nice little bow, like just ties a nice little bow at the end of the song so that we end on 1 in a satisfying way. I think that just looking at this from sort of a bird's eye view of the entire chord structure makes this much easier to memorize, because we have our A section, which is C, F, G, C. And if you can remember that, you've got 2/3 of the song. Well, you've got 3/4 of the song pretty much. So you memorize those chords. Then we have our B section, which is our reverse Lean on Me, I guess. So we have our G to C, our F, and then our C again. Then for our ending, very similar to the first line, we have our 1 chord, we have our 4 chord, and then we have our, 1, 5, 1. Again, that 1, 5, 1 is in almost everything. And actually, let's talk about this real quick. See, this is why I think this hymn is interesting. Anytime you see a 1, 5, 1, in this case, a C, a G, and a C, actually what's another great gospel thing to do is over that first C, you put it in a G in the bass. And then you play the G. And then you play the C. And I think that's more in line with gospel style. So that's just something that you can do. Again, the Piano by Pictures notation is just a sketch. As we've kind of talked about with Amazing Grace, and He's Got the Whole World in His Hands, the hymn book can even be wrong, the trusted source, because people play the song how they hear it, and then maybe that song improves on the original, and the song just keeps on changing, moving through the world. It's alive. It's this thing. So that's something I want you to kind of think about too, is that music is not this concrete thing where you have to play all the notes in order and do everything correct. If you hear something a different way, you can certainly do that. And so with this ending cadence, we'll call it, so you have a 1, and that 5 is in the bass, and then you have your G chord. See how it sort of falls into place there? This is a little bit destabilized. You're like, whoa. And then that falls down, and then that falls down. So you have this almost like psh, psh, like a ball falling downstairs, or like that Chef Boyardee commercial where the can rolls down the street. You know what I'm talking about. So you have 5 over 1, or 1 over 5, 5, and then 1. And you can do that on a ton of songs. I mean, we've been talking about Amazing Grace. Here it is. See, that's a C with a G in the bass, and then G sus7. So yeah, you can make these things your own. But yeah, this C right here could be a C over G. And I think that's actually sort of how it appears in the original hymn. Yeah, see, so like there's precedent for these things. Now that we've taken kind of a bird's eye view of it, I want to talk about a couple things here. I know that we're probably curious about this thing right here and this thing right here. That F sharp over that C, that's something. This is fine, but this is a little strange, huh? Similarly, on this F chord, I know that to some of your ears, this is strange. This is why I think it is fun to sometimes take a look at the actual hymn in the hymn book. So like, what is going on here? Let's look at the original chords. Okay, so what is this? We have our C chord, so that's within the hymn book. And a lot of times this is how you kind of memorize these things, where you have your big island chords and then there's like little movements in between. But generally, it's all over this C sound. There could be other things happening, but still a C. And so what's happening here is we have a C diminished. And a diminished chord is kind of like a weird minor chord. This is not a great way to explain this, but here's our C major. We move our middle note down to make it into a C minor. And then if we move this note down, we get this diminished chord. And you can even add this to get the seventh. 1, 3, 5, 7. Interesting little chord here. This explains everything about what's happening in the melody here, because we have our C, and then we have this. See how it switches to the diminished to grab those notes and falls back into it? So we have. And then the F is the same thing. We have. See that diminished shape? And I'm doing this in the right hand just to kind of illustrate how the melody is following the chords. But you could go. So I just make it diminished here. And it's pretty easy because this happens in hymns all the time, where basically it's like a chord, these notes just move down and kind of pop back into their place. And then the F is the same way. It looks a little different, but it's just these two notes moving down and then back up. And it's a nice little embellishment. It just gives us a little kind of, I don't know, to me, I think it makes it sound like America. But yeah. Okay, so this right here explains why these weird notes exist. If you don't want to do the diminished chords and you're not scared of a little bit of what we call dissonance, notes clashing into each other, don't worry about it. However, if you were curious about what's going on with those notes, that's what's going on with those notes. And the last thing I want to talk about is the meter of this song. So this is in the original hymn book in 6/8. It may say just like 3-beat on the Piano by Pictures, just normal arrangement. But the crazy thing about 6 is, look at this. You have 6. That's just 2 3s. So it's 3. It's fine. How I like to count this is I actually don't like to count this. I like to think about drums instead. Let's try something a little fun here. I don't like counting. What I like to do is to just know what the drummer should be playing, and then I just listen to the drums in my brain. And I know that's a weird concept, but try it. It might work for you. But a 6/8 beat, at least to me, I hear it like this. So I hear 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, and I hear the big beat on 1 and 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3. And I'm sure you've heard songs that use this beat before. This is super common. So Da 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 da. See, so I use the groove to line it up, and that helps me play a lot more rhythmically, and it makes the song, make more sense from a rhythm standpoint. That's a little fast, but you get the idea about kind of keeping everything in line. And this arrangement, or at least this way of looking at it's kind of nice too, just because these dotted rhythms, you can just ignore them, but at least just seeing exactly how everything kind of fits in a geometric sense. It's one of the, I guess, advantages of traditional sheet music, but also, this is also a little confusing too. So, follow your ear. All right, cool. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that gave you some things to think about. I hope I didn't, confuse anybody too much. But I will say, if like you were confused by any of this, don't worry about it. You sort of take what you can, and the most important thing is to be kind to yourself while you practice. Don't put too much pressure on yourself to learn things quickly. Don't put a time limit on how fast you think you should learn something. Just let your brain do its thing and just be nice to yourself. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped. Bye now. Take care.